Tom, let me start off with the announcement. I think I may have mentioned this yesterday, and I'm hearing people talk about this now. We don't have a budget coming from the federal government for another couple of weeks. I think April 16th is the date. Yet there seem to be announcements, and obviously by design, just about every day from this federal government, and things that would be included in that budget, which is a very different approach, is it not?
I am told by the folks around Trudeau that there will be another announcement every day except 2 days that they'll take off between now and the budget on April 16th. So that's a lot of announcements. It's the dance of the seven veils, don't you know? Trudeau is, at this stage of the game, simply going for 3-point jump shots. He's got no time to fool around and go all the way back to when Paul Martin was the Prime Minister for a very short while. And he was actually the object of an RCMP investigation because of a leak of something that was in the budget. That's because the budget used to be secret, and it's no longer anymore. And it's also a question of respect for Parliament. I mean, this is a privilege of Parliament to know what's in legislation, especially something that is confidence like the budget. And Mr. Trudeau is just throwing that all overboard, just saying, look, I've got to try to get some of my popularity up. The other thing that I got out of them is quite interesting. They have identified a group of voters 43 years of age and younger. They're calling them, the Gen X and Millennium group. And they are the people who voted massively for Trudeau in 2015, got him in the first time. And now, according to the folks around Trudeau, they're admitting straight up that they have entirely lost that demographic. That's their word. They have completely lost that demographic. Why? Well, because they know that they're the first generation in Canadian history that's going to be poorer than their parents. So this is the type of stuff that Poilievre has zeroed in on a year ago during his leadership campaign, over a year ago now. And he's just got this stuff figured out, and Trudeau's playing catch-up. So Trudeau's announcement today, housing. What has been the number one subject for Poilievre? Housing. Trudeau's been trying to talk about the stuff that Poilievre's been forcing onto the front burner. At the same time, Aaron, what Trudeau is trying to do is to define himself, because, of course, Poilievre has already defined him. So he's saying, I don't mind about deficits. I learned about that when I ran in against him in 2015. I had this silly idea that we should actually have balanced budgets. Trudeau said, no, let's have deficits. And he fulfilled that promise. He doubled Canada's debt in the time that he's been there. So he's trying now to say, look, I'm going to have not only pharmacare, and I'm going to have dental care, and I'm going to put more money into child care, all this type of stuff. A lot of it lifted holus bolus from the NDP. And he's saying to Poilievre, take me on. Here's the chip. Knock this chip off my shoulder. I want to have this fight with you. I'm going to tell Canadians, yes, we have to spend more. These are investments. They're not expenses. They're investments in the future. And this is the rather desperate move that Trudeau is trying right now. I don't think it's going to work.
I wonder, Tom, I was going to use the analogy of flooding the rink. Just throw 100 pucks on, you don't know where to go. But I wonder, too, though, strategically, you announce all these plans, everything is tied to money. So the idea that, you would just say, okay, we're going to be very careful in what we spend, that idea is obviously out the window, because they're going to announce $1 billion here, $1 billion there. At the end of the day, we're going to have a gigantic deficit, which they will, I guess, have to explain. But it prevents the opposition from criticizing anything. They're giving money to, for school food programs, they're giving money for housing. If you're the opposition, you can't come out and say, well, this is a terrible idea, other than saying it's too much money.
They're not going to be able to win that fight one by one over the next 10 days. But what's the one thing that's left for Chrystia Freeland to announce? Since all the content of the budget will have been leaked bit by bit, what's left on budget day? The size of the deficit. So that becomes the only focus of attention. And then everybody's going to look at that and say, this is a massive deficit. Quebec is in a massive deficit position. Ontario's in a massive deficit position. Isn't all of this about what type of place we're leaving to future generations?
Right.
So we're already leaving them a massive environmental debt. Now we're going to leave them a massive economic debt that's only getting worse. So this is the bet that Trudeau's making. He is convinced that he's got enough goodies in there that the average Canadian is going to say, I want my child care, I want my dental care, I want the stuff that Trudeau's buying. And Poilievre's bet is that Canadians, by and large, are going to be saying, can we please get back to some semblance of good financial administration in Canada?
Okay, I'm going to ask you to put your betting hat on as someone who's had, a long history in politics. Which is the right idea here?
I think that it's a desperation idea, but it's about the only play that was left to the Liberals. They're convinced that this actually has a fighting chance. I'm not. But if you look at their options across the board, Aaron, there's not much left for
Right.
them to do. It's like, they're flying a plane, and on the dashboard, there's a bunch of red flashing lights and sirens, and they're saying, well, let's just pound every button on the dashboard to try to calm some of this down. But I think that if at the end of this exercise, so let's say in a month from now, okay, we're going to be early May, we've been through the budget cycle, there have been a couple of weeks to dissect and digest the budget. If Trudeau is still in free fall, and he has been, he's been in free fall for a while, then I think that the people around him are going to start putting their hand on their shoulder saying, boss, it's not working, maybe you should give this some thought.
Good analogy. All right, let me move from that. I asked you this today when we were together. I want you to just explain if you can, because I think a lot of us are wondering what was going on. So you had Melanie Joly, our federal cabinet minister, minding her own business, walking down Laurier on Sunday, when someone basically confronted her, someone she did not know. He rode a bike up on a sidewalk, started pointing his phone at her. And at the end of the day, two questions came up. Number one, where the hell was her security detail? Now, I understand there was someone from the RCMP there, although I didn't see them in the video anyway, intervening in any way, shape, or form. And number two, and I think Jim Meny said this, and I think other people get this as well, had this happened in the U.S. to a government official, they'd have been on the ground in 5 seconds flat. So what happened here, and what should happen here, Tom?
Well, that's going to be interesting to find out the answer to your first question, because the version that I got in some discussions is that the person who would have been closest to her might have been her partner in life. So it'll be interesting to find out if there was indeed a security detail there. I'm kind of skeptical about that. From all the reports I've had so far, there was no security detail there, and there should be. I think that's the answer to the first part of your question. We should have, for people. She's the foreign affairs minister of a G7 country. And by the way, the guy who intercepted her and stuck his camera in her face, she put up her hand to his camera at one point, and he's trying to say she was the one who was being aggressive with him. And he doesn't want his name to come out because it could harm him. I hope his name comes out so that people can at least know. I mean, if he wants to do stuff like that, he should wear it and assume it. But the other thing is, too, he goes so far as to say, and this, it's worth actually watching this whole thing. And she goes, look, I'm just in the street trying to have some downtime. I'm just walking in my neighborhood. Please give me a break. And he goes, you have no right to walk in the street peacefully when this and that is happening at the other end of the world. And so we're going, okay, this is an alternate reality this guy lives in. He thinks it's actually okay for him to aggressively come up to a sitting minister, get in her face quite literally on an issue, yes, that's in the news, and she pleads, look, I'm just in the street walking, leave me alone. And he, one, won't listen to that, and two, has the temerity to try to pass himself off as the victim here. Again, apparently there are some news outlets that know very much who he is, and I'm anxious to find out.
She had said, actually, when I asked that, he said he walked up to her, this person, and said, my job is to harass you. His actual words.
Yeah, well, I'd love to know what his job is, because apparently he said he was worried about losing it.
Yeah, exactly. I will point out one other thing, and that is, in this particular case, Tom, and I know it's come up before, we talk about how fewer and fewer people want to get into politics, because not this specific incident, but because of harassment like this. And I wonder, by not doing anything, and we checked with the Montreal Police, by the way, earlier on to see if anything had come of it. We were told, no, it's now an RCMP matter, so it's a federal matter now. But this just encourages more people to continue to do this kind of thing. It emboldens them, does it not?
That's a little bit too easy, too. I mean, I'll go back to Adel Sharkawi and the words that he spoke at that big rally that you'll recall. And then it was Sote and the city of Montreal.
Yeah.
Oh, so we've handed this off to the RCMP.
And we've heard nothing.
You have the same criminal code, you have the same policing powers, but you're handing it off to the feds. And here they're going to do the same thing, hand it off to the feds. I'm very anxious to see, because, this thing, a picture speaks 1,000 words. There are several thousand words that these pictures speak, and it's certainly not, in my view, that he is the victim.
Tom Mulcair, back tomorrow morning with Andrew Carter at 7:40. Thank you, Tom.
Talk to you soon.
All right.